Lu Yu was walking home with her grocery basket. Instead, she saw a little boy running out from the direction of her house. The boy was wearing old-fashioned square clothes, and the factory label on top of the clothes made her heart clench violently. It was a memory that belonged to the factory, an era she tried to forget. She immediately chased after him, but the little boy had already disappeared at the end of the alley. Returning home, she found the door open and the living room in disarray. Torn family photos were scattered on the floor, the window's glass cracked. At this moment, she felt the shadows of the past closing in again. The phone rang suddenly, interrupting her thoughts. On the other end of the line was a familiar voice, brought heavy news. Her old workmate Wang had passed away. Her heart gradually sank. Wang's later years had not been smooth. His children had left him early, leaving only his grandson to depend on him. Later, the grandson also disappeared. After hearing this news, Liu froze in place, his eyes falling on the broken photo on the ground. The figure of that little boy surfaced in her mind, and an unspeakable uneasiness grew in her heart. At night, Liu sits alone at her husband's grave. She closes her eyes and remembers the days she spent together, as if the smiles of her colleagues and fellow workers are still close to her eyes. Her hand gently strokes the tombstone, and her heart swells with emotion. 40 years have passed, and all her colleagues have left one by one, and she may be one of the few who remain in Beijing. Memories came like a tidal wave, and Liu suddenly realized that those forgotten things in the past might need to be settled once and for all. She decided to return to Guizhou. The train moved slowly, and the scenery outside the window receded rapidly. Liu quietly looked out the window with a deep gaze. The familiar mountains and villages pulled her back to memories from decades ago. She pondered whether that boy, the little boy in the old-fashioned factory uniform, had some kind of hidden connection with this incident. The complexity of her heart became more and more impossible to calm, and she had a vague feeling that a story of what had been waiting for her. The train stops on the platform. Liu pulls her suitcase and gets off, and the familiar air hits her. In the crowd, she saw Chen and Yang, whom she hadn't seen for years. The three embraced each other. The warmth of reunion after a long time makes her heart well up, but her eyes can't help drifting into the distance, where unanswered questions seem to be hidden. The car drove along the winding mountain road towards the factory, and the familiar red brick buildings appeared in her sight. Chen told her about the current state of the factory. Most of the workshops had been rented out, and only a few were still in operation. Lu got out of the car, and she followed Chen and Yang into the old residential area, which already looked exceptionally run down. Chen mentions that Wang's family is still here and hasn't moved away. Li's heart swells with mixed emotions, and she is torn between whether or not to visit Wang's family. After all, she still feels guilty about Wang's family all these years. In the end, she decided to meet Wang's family to clear up her doubts. She knocked on the door of Wang's house, and a familiar figure appeared in the doorway. It was Wang's wife, Li. The two of them briefly looked at each other, and Li's gaze held coldness and rejection. She didn't say a word and closed the door directly. Liu stood outside the door and froze for a long time. Through the window, she saw a boy standing quietly inside the house. Liu realizes that he is Wang and Li's grandson Hai. His silhouette made her heart jolt. Lu's mind once again recalled the boy who had run out of her house, her hands and feet cold, and she vaguely felt some kind of unbearable connection in her heart. On the day of Wang's funeral, Lu stood far away near the cemetery, watching Wang's family and workers lay flowers. Her footsteps tried to get closer several times, but always stopped at a distance. She thought that if she hadn't reported Wang because she was fighting for a place to go back to Beijing, the life of Wang's family might have been completely different from what it is now. In her dream, Lu returns to the factory of the past. She sees her fellow workers in neat rows, their songs ringing through the factory. Wang stands beside her, smiling and inviting her home for dinner. On a swing in the distance, Hai, Wang's grandson, swings with a big smile. It was the best image she remembered, warm and distant. The streets were empty and silent at night, the dim light spilling out onto the ground. Lu dragged her tired feet along the road. The figure of the boy flashed through her mind, the familiar checkered clothes and innocent face. Just ahead in the alley, she seemed to see the boy again. But this time, she didn't chase after him. She just stood still and watched that blurry figure disappear into the depths of the night. The next day, Liu went back to Wang's door and stood there for a long time without knocking. She knew that she owed their family so much. She told Lai about her remorse and her struggles over the years. She said she had only wanted her daughter to be born in Beijing so that she could have a better life. All these years, she has been living in remorse. She has no friends in Beijing, and she can't fit in with her daughter's life because her daughter has her job and family, and she doesn't even have anyone to talk to or eat with. She often regretted her decision. She leaned against the doorframe, her eyes moist and her heart heavy with apologies. Inside the door, Liu was curled up on the floor, weeping silently. The two were separated by a door, but it was as if they were separated by two worlds. Li walked into the house. Her eyes followed their silhouettes, but she didn't take a step. Li still wanted to tell Lai that every day of these 40 years had not been good for her. She knew she had done too much to wrong their family and had hurt them deeply. She wanted to apologize to her for what had happened in the past. She stood in front of Wang's house for a long time until she finally turned away and disappeared, carrying her irreparable regrets.